Now, here's the where we get into really even more delicate topic with satanic ritual abuse. And so give you just a fair warning right now. We're going to share a video that discusses this topic it's a very sensitive topic, and it's a topic that can be very traumatizing to a lot of people. So just a heads up, we're going to be covering that. So what is satanic ritual abuse? Satanic ritual abuse is the ritualistic abuse starting with children, and it's used to turn the victim against Christ, and it trains the victim to be an abuser as well. And also they have built a network of protection for their crimes to make sure that they don't get in trouble for what they're doing. Important books to be able to learn more about this, besides just the little bit that I'm going to touch upon tonight, is the Franklin Cover-Up. And there's a PDF to this on our website as well. If you just search satanic ritual abuse, you'll be able to find the articles where we have a link to the free PDF of this book to be able to read, or you can just order it on Amazon. You have the Franklin Scandal, which has an audiobook as well, which is it picks up where the Franklin Cover-Up left off. And then Transformation America, it has some things in there that aren't that I think have been debunked, but it's got enough truth in it that it's worth just using the spirit as you read it. And then also we have the Glenn Pace memo, which we're going to be talking about as well, which is a memo of the presiding member of the presiding bishopric of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who is commissioned to investigate satanic ritual abuse amongst its members and his findings. So these are important things that we have on our website for you to be able to learn more about. So now we're going to start with the Glenn Pace memo. Now, Glenn Pace was an individual that I actually was able to interview 2 weeks before he died. And some things that he said, just leading up to what he wrote in his report, was that it's all true, and it's much worse than he was even able to put, or that was in the memo that was made public. But he was very concerned and did not really want to talk to me very much, and seemed very fearful for what for the topic and what it might have on his family. So this was a report that came out in 1990 to the Strengthening the Church Members Committee. And in the report, it says, pursuant to the committee's request, I am writing this memorandum to pass along what I have learned about ritualistic child abuse. Hopefully, it will be of some value to you as you continue to monitor the problem. You have already received the LDS Social Services Report on Satanism, dated May 24th, 1989, a report from Brent Ward, and a memorandum from myself dated October 20th, 1989, in response to Brother Ward's report. Therefore, I will limit this writing to information not contained in those papers. Now, unfortunately, we don't have, those were not leaked. We don't have the information that was in those three other reports, unfortunately. And so we're just sticking to what he put out in this report that was leaked and made public. So he continues on, he says, I have met with 60 victims. That number could be twice or three times as many if I did not discipline myself to only one meeting per week. So this is a long investigation, because he met with 60 victims, meeting only once a week, over a year. I have not wanted my involvement with this issue to become a handicap in fulfilling my assigned responsibilities. On the other hand, I felt someone needed to pay the price to obtain an intellectual and spiritual conviction as to the seriousness of this problem within the church. Of the 60 victims with whom I have met, 53 are female and 7 are male. 8 are children. The abuse occurred in the following places: Utah, Idaho, California, Mexico, and other places. 53 victims are currently living in the state of Utah. All 60 individuals are members of the church. 45 victims allege witnessing and or participating in human sacrifice. The majority were abused by relatives, often their parents. All have developed psychological problems, and most have been diagnosed as having multiple personality disorder or some other form of dissociative order. Ritualistic child abuse is the most hideous of all child abuse. The basic objective is premeditated, to systematically and methodically torture and terrorize children until they are forced to disassociate. So they have a personality split. They're just abused so much, to such an extent, that they are their minds just split. The torture is not a consequence of the loss of temper, but the execution of well-planned, well-thought-out rituals, often performed by close relatives. The only escape for the children is to disassociate. They will develop a new personality to enable them to endure various forms of abuse. The memories seem to come in layers. For example, the first memory might be of incest. Then they remember robes and candles. Next, they realize that their father or mother, or both, were present when they were being abused. Another layer would be the memory of seeing other people hurt and even killed. Then they remember having seen babies killed. Another layer is realizing that they participated in the sacrifices. One of the most painful memories may be that they even sacrificed their own baby. With each layer of memory comes another set of problems with which they must deal. Some have said that the witnesses to this type of treatment cannot be trusted because of the victim's unstable condition and because practically all of them have some kind of dissociative disorder. Now, this is a common thing that is brought up as a way to dismiss or to say that it's not credible. And so his response, I think, is very poignant and very important to consider. He says, in fact, the stories are so bizarre as to raise serious credibility questions. The irony is that one of the objectives of the occult is to create multiple personalities within the children in order to keep the secrets. However, when 60 witnesses testified to the same type of torture and murder, it becomes impossible for me personally not to believe them. So he says he understands the tendency towards dismissing it, but he says that these people that were unassociated with each other, this wasn't something that was in the news. This wasn't something that they could copycat and just say, oh, I saw this story and that's what happened to me, and just repeat it. This is before it really became a widespread phenomenon, widespread known phenomenon. And so he believed that there were enough people that didn't know each other that told the same exact story that he had to believe them. The spiritual indoctrination, which takes place during the physical abuse, is one of the most difficult to overcome. In addition to experiencing stark terror and pain, the children are also instructed in satanic doctrine. Everything is completely reversed. White is black, black is white, good is bad, bad is good. Satan is going to rule during the millennium. Children are put in a situation where they believe they are going to die, such as being buried alive or being placed in a plastic bag and immersed in water. Prior to doing so, the abuser tells the child to pray to Jesus to see if he will save her. Imagine a 7-year-old girl having been told she is going to die, praying to Jesus to save her, and nothing happens. Then, at the last moment, she is rescued, but the person saving her is a representative of Satan. He uses this experience to convince her that the only person who really cares about her is Satan. She is Satan's child, and she might as well become loyal to him. So he says that this doesn't just happen in Utah. So I haven't quoted, I quoted from a lot of it. I thought those were important aspects to bring out. But the full report is on the website, the treeoflibertysociety.com. Just again, search for satanic ritual abuse, and you'll be able to find the full document to read for yourself. But I felt that those were key points to understand that it's not just in Utah. And then we have here that it expands out. It's not just in Utah. Not only is it not just in Utah, but this is involving high-level political appointees, and not political appointees, but elected officials even. We have here the Washington Times, a homosexual prostitution inquiry ensnares VIPs with Reagan and Bush. Callboys took midnight tour of White House. And we have another article, a brief history of satanic panic in the 1980s. They try to kind of dismiss it by calling it the satanic panic. That doesn't really exist. But we have the confessions. We have this report that came out in 1993 from the federal government. This is on the FBI's website. It says that no significant overall differences between ritual and religion-related cases with respect to evidence of abuse and harm, except that religion-related cases more often involved perpetrator confessions. However, child religion-related cases were more likely to involve evidence of abuse, harm, than cases in any other situation. So, first of all, to say that there's no evidence is false. Not only do they have evidence, but you have confessions. In fact, one of the cases in the state of Utah, one of the perpetrators confessed to the attorney general and didn't receive any consequence. And so even when confessions were made, a lot of the time, nothing even happened because they had to protect this heavily connected network. Here's another one, the National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crime in 1992. This is an investigator's guide to allegations of ritual child abuse. It says, why are victims alleging things that do not seem to be true? Some of what the victims in these cases allege is physically impossible. Victim cut up and put back together. Offender took the building apart and then rebuilt it. Some is possible, but improbable. Human sacrifice, cannibalism, vampirism. Some is possible and probable. Child pornography, clever manipulation of victims. And some is corroborated. Medical evidence of vaginal and anal trauma, offender confessions. So to say that it just doesn't happen is just a lie, because people confess to being a part of these things. And it's important for us to see the national implications that we see in the Franklin cover-up and in the Franklin scandal. And so here's a video, a short clip of a video that we have on our website as well, if you want to watch the full video. But I think it's important for us to see this is the real human trafficking that isn't getting any play in the media.
Despite the investigation, Larry King remained free to feed his pedophilic parties with child victims. But in 1988, a routine review brought the Boys Town cases to the attention of Nebraska's State Foster Care Review Board.
And the information presented to the Foster Care Review Board, either via the telephone reports, the personal reports, or the reports we reviewed, Larry King's name was consistently present as someone that the youth were making allegations against. I mean, I turned that information over to authorities, and nothing happened. I would say we handed over at least a foot-high amount of material. Generally speaking, the allegations were ignored.
Omaha police now accept that Larry King may have been abusing children.
Good morning, Roberta.
Good morning, Steve.
But its most senior detective claims he never received any evidence.
It is certainly possible that Mr. King was involved in illegal acts with children. If there was sufficient evidence of those types of allegations, he would have been prosecuted by the county attorney's office.
For me, it was very clear that the case was not investigated and not pursued because of the alleged perpetrators.
Those perpetrators named by the children formed a ring of rich and powerful pedophiles in Omaha. Men from industry, politics, the media, even the police.
We see the serious nature of this and the people involved, people in the media, so that way it doesn't get out there. People in the police, so that way it doesn't get prosecuted. And then people, of course, in government institutions that are able to be protected by this conspiracy of silence. That people that were investigating it sent in documents, just stacks, several feet high, she said, that proved that who was involved and what they were doing, and people involved, people that would do something about it, right, in government. I didn't see it. If I saw the evidence, so we would have prosecuted. And so they're able to cover it up and make it look like it's not a real thing. So we see here people like Warren Buffett. Didn't think that would be part of that, right? John Kerry, George W. Bush, and major cabinet officials in the Reagan-Bush White House. But of course, there was a government and media cover-up where the grand jury says the stories were carefully crafted hoax, and that the report finds little proof of ritual abuse. Satan abuse is all a myth, they say, even though we've got all of these different confessions. Now you can't, this is really small, but you probably can't see this very well. We have an NBC reporter reaching out to me because I'm one of the only people that ever interviewed Bishop Pace and wanted to talk to me about it. And so her name was Brandy Zadronsny, and wanted to show you some of the things that she's talked about. Why is it that she wanted to talk to me? Because why would NBC want to talk about satanic ritual abuse when their whole job is to dismiss and to poo-poo it? So we'll just watch a couple of these clips.
Phrase from the 1980s, satanic panic. It was sort of shorthand for a slew of false accusations that children were involved in satanic rituals.
Well, now the conspiracy is making a comeback online, and this is thanks to groups like QAnon. You know that name. NBC News senior reporter Brandy Zadronsny covers extremism in the internet for us and joins us now. So, Brandy, in your story, you highlight the story of a Republican who's running for re-election in Utah. Help us understand the connection here.
Well, this Republican prosecutor was running for re-election in Utah. He was the top prosecutor. He was pretty progressive. Some people labeled him soft on crime, but he was a upstanding Mormon guy, pillar of the community. And what had happened was these old allegations made in the 90s and the early aughts were sort of brought up again by political foes, by someone who he was extraditing from another country, and weaponized against him. These allegations are wild. They are very unlikely to be true. And unfortunately, what happened was people got them in public records requests and spilled them all over the internet. He had to come forward into his real life and say, neither I nor my wife, who is a professor at BYU, are doing these things, cannibalizing children, murdering children, things too awful to even think about. And because of that, in part, he lost the election.
You and I have worked on some of these QAnon stories together, and we know how these things can just go viral for no reason. I heard that you're reporting that Astroworld, the music festival last year, which is where 10 people were killed, is also involved in some of this conspiracy theory?
Yeah, well, Kate, the thing is that now, because of the internet, ferreting out Satan is now sort of a participatory misinformation quest. And so a thing like Astroworld happens and something terrible happens. And so it's not just enough that something terrible happens. It's that Satan is somehow involved in it. And people are seeing symbols and somehow signs, piecing together parts of social media. And it's not just things like Astroworld, right? It can happen in any sort of situation. So we're seeing that sort of satanic labeling and piecing together clues happening in all sorts of situations and events. It's pretty widespread now.
Very disturbing. Brandy Zadradny, thank you so much.
So now it's important. We want to show some of the interviews with the Utah County Attorney, David Levitt, and what he was saying in the public before it even became public. Some of the things that he said and some of the responses to that.
That the sheriff's office is using its position for political gain.
Claims outlined in a 151-page victim statement from a 2012 case against a therapist named Utah County Attorney David Levitt and several others.
Alleging that we were guilty of cannibalizing young children and murdering young children.
Well, there are a number of reasons why the Utah County Attorney's Office might have a conflict of interest. Not just because Levitt named himself as a suspect earlier this year. He's also given multiple statements about his relationship with Hamblin and some of the alleged victims. As you're about to see, the nature of those statements have changed over the past 2 years.
Would you mind riding in the back of a police car?
Men and women allege David Hamblin used positions of power as a father, a therapist, a neighbor, and as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to ritualistically abuse children. He was arrested Wednesday morning, but investigators say he probably won't be the only one.
I have nothing to hide.
Until Hamblin's arrest, Fox 13 News chose not to identify any of the subjects of the investigation, but that did not stop Utah County Attorney David Levitt from outing himself as a suspect in June and describing his relationship with Hamblin.
I prosecuted the therapist in Juab County for poaching a deer. He poached a deer to use for ritualistic purposes. This therapist was my elders quorum president in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He was my neighbor. I had a family connection.
During that same press conference, Levitt described his accuser as tragically mentally ill. She's one of the same women who accused Hamblin and others.
Shame on you for doing that. It's uncalled for. He said tragically mentally ill woman 5 times. To attack their mental health status as a way to discredit them, and it was clear that that's what he was doing, and that's just not okay.
There is no organized ring of abuse. It was debunked.
But watch and listen. More than 2 years before that press conference, Levitt sat down for a different interview and was asked if he thought ritualistic sex abuse was real. He went on to describe Hamblin and his own accuser, calling her a victim.
Do I think that occurs? Yeah, I think it occurs.
I know some victims of it. Yeah, I know some victims of it. I was not in a position to prosecute it. Who was into Native American stuff? He'd kill deer and get deer hearts and drink their blood and drink the deer's blood.
At the time, Levitt was under investigation by Homeland Security.
How do you train a dog to roll over when it's time to roll over? You know, you do it by giving a reward and repetition. If a man wants to program some little girl to give immoral sex anytime he wants to, you start young and give rewards. You know, I mean, it's...
That's sick that he would laugh about that. So we can see in these examples that are going on that these guys are, this is a network, and that when it is brought up, they try to say, no, that's been debunked, when they know that it's not. And then the same individual, Jacob Hamblin, he was just actually the only person in this story that happened last June that has actually been charged with any crime, even though it was the same individual that accused Jacob Hamblin, many individuals that also accused David Levitt. But because of their connections, certain people are allowed to get away with it. I'll be shocked if even Jacob Hamblin actually serves any time in jail.